Ever had a photograph that's lost shadow or highlight details because the contrast in the scene or the brightness range in the scene you are photographing is beyond the capabilities of your camera's sensor? Well, Adobe has done something about this in Photoshop CS2. It has introduced a new technology called HDR, or High Dynamic Range Photographs. This technology will enable you to create images with a far greater contrast or brightness range than you've ever been able to before. Essentially, the process is simple. You take several different images of the same scene at different exposures, making sure that the camera stays still from one shot to the next. Notice, and we're sitting here in the bridge application at the moment, looking at the camera EXIF data. As I move between images, notice that the shutter speed is changing, not the aperture. This is important when you're taking a series of shots. If you change the aperture, you change the way in which the image looks. So in order to create an HDR image, let's select all of the photos in Bridge to start with, hold down Shift, click the first and last image, and then go into the Tools menu and down to Photoshop, and then into Merge to HDR, which is a new feature in Photoshop CS2 and Bridge. Notice that the images are now opening up in Photoshop and they are being transferred into the new HDR workspace. Part of that process of transferring was to establish the difference in exposure value between each of the images. This is done by looking at the EXIF data that's stored with the photo itself. Photoshop automatically layers all those images up together, and using the information from all those images allows you to create a picture that has detail from the most delicate highlights through to the darkest shadows. We're getting a load more information, a load more detail than we've ever had before. So essentially the process is done here, and what we need to do is set the white point preview for our screen. And we do that by adjusting this slider value. Then we click OK. The file is now a HDR file. You'll see on the end of the file name or display up in the title bar that it has 32. This means we have 32 bits per channel sitting in this file. At any time during the process of displaying these files, we can actually change the way in which those images are being displayed so that we can see much of the detail that is contained in this file by moving the exposure value that you can see here. Now, the toolset that is available for use with 32-bit files is somewhat limited in Photoshop CS2, but I'm sure, just as was the case with the first introduction of 16-bit files, this will change with ensuing releases in Photoshop. But here we have a couple of important features that can be used with 32-bit, including Channel Mixer for creating truly stunning black and white images with loads of tones. The other thing to look at in terms of features is the ability to convert a 32-bit file down to 16 or even 8 bits, and choosing how you go about doing that, what files are changed, what tones are kept, and what tones are discarded in the process.